The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing architectural plans for the new Meridian Hilton in downtown Seattle. My phone buzzed with a familiar number, one I hadn't seen in almost 2 years. "Hello, Aunt Patricia." "Why, Her voice carried that same condescending tone I remembered from childhood, the one that made it clear she considered herself the family matriarch despite being only my father's sister. "I'm calling about the family reunion next month." I set down my pen and leaned back in my leather chair, looking out at the San Francisco skyline from my corner office on the 52nd floor of the Meridian Tower. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows I could see 3 of my hotels dotting the cityscape like jewels. The reunion? Yes, well, we've decided to make some changes to the guest list this year. We want to keep it to family members who have actually made something of themselves. You understand? "I'm not sure I do." Patricia's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Maya, sweetheart, we all know you're still playing around with that little art hobby of yours. Living in that tiny apartment, barely making ends meet. This year's reunion is about celebrating success. We're having it at the San Francisco Hilton, for goodness sake. We can't have you there making everyone uncomfortable." I glanced at the framed photo on my desk, the groundbreaking ceremony for my first hotel acquisition 5 years ago. I was holding a golden shovel, standing next to the mayor and the city planning commission. The caption read, "Meridian Hospitality Group announces $2.3 billion expansion plan." "So you don't want me to come?" "Don't take it personally, dear. It's just that Uncle Richard will be there with his new tech company and Cousin Jennifer just made partner at her law firm, and Marcus, well, you know, Marcus owns 3 restaurants now. We want to focus on the family's achievements, not, well, you know." "I see. I knew you'd understand. You always were the reasonable one, even if you made some questionable life choices. Maybe next year if you've figured things out by then." I picked up the latest issue of Forbes from my desk, the one with my photo on the cover under the headline, "The Hotel Heiress: How Maya Chin Built a Hospitality Empire." The article inside detailed my acquisition of the Hilton chain 6 months ago, a $47 billion purchase that made me one of the youngest women to ever own a major hotel brand. "Aunt Patricia, can I ask where exactly you're having this reunion?" "The Hilton San Francisco Union Square. We've reserved the entire Imperial Ballroom. It cost a fortune, but we wanted somewhere that reflects the family's success." I couldn't help but smile. "The Imperial Ballroom is beautiful." "Great choice." "Yes, well, when you're celebrating success you don't cut corners. Anyway, I have to go. The caterers are expecting my call, and there are so many details to coordinate when you're planning an event for successful people." "I understand, Aunt Patricia." "Good. Well, goodbye then." The line went dead. I sat staring at my phone for a moment, then burst out laughing. The Imperial Ballroom at the Hilton San Francisco Union Square, the flagship property of the chain I now owned. The reunion was being held at my hotel, and they were excluding me because they thought I was a struggling artist. My assistant David knocked on the door. "Miss Chin, your 3 p.m. is here." "Cancel it," I said, still grinning. "And get me the general manager of the Hilton San Francisco Union Square on the line. Right away." "Anything else?" "Yes. Pull the reservations for the Chin family reunion next month. I want to review all the details personally." 20 minutes later, I was speaking with Jennifer Martinez, the GM of my flagship San Francisco property. "Miss Chin, what a surprise. How can I help you today?" "Jennifer, I understand there's a family reunion booked in the Imperial Ballroom for next month. The Chin family." "Yes, let me pull that up. Here it is. Chin family reunion, Saturday the 15th. They've booked the Imperial Ballroom premium catering package, open bar, the works. It's actually one of our larger private events this month. I want you to personally oversee every detail of this event. Make sure it's absolutely perfect." "Of course, Ms. Chin. Is there any particular reason for the special attention?" I leaned back in my chair, still smiling. "Let's just say I have a personal interest in making sure this reunion is memorable." The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of business meetings, property inspections, and strategic planning sessions. Meridian Hospitality Group was expanding faster than ever, with new acquisitions in London, Tokyo, and Dubai. The Hilton purchase had been the crown jewel, but it was just the beginning of my vision to create a global hospitality empire that prioritized both luxury and accessibility. What my family didn't know, what nobody outside my inner circle knew, was that I'd been building this empire for the past 8 years, ever since I'd left the family's expectations behind to pursue what they called my little art hobby. It had started with a single painting sold to a hotel lobby in Portland. The buyer, impressed with my work, had commissioned pieces for 3 more properties. Within 2 years, I was designing and curating art collections for luxury hotels across the West Coast. But I wasn't content to just be an artist. I wanted to understand the business side of hospitality. So I started investing. First in individual properties, then in small hotel groups. I learned everything I could about real estate, finance, marketing, and operations. I studied the industry leaders, identified inefficiencies, and developed strategies to create better experiences for both guests and employees. By the time I was 28, I owned 17 hotels and had launched Meridian Hospitality Group. By 30, I controlled over 100 properties across 12 countries. The Hilton acquisition last year had made me one of the most powerful people in the global hospitality industry. But to my family, I was still just Maya, the struggling artist, living in what they assumed was poverty while pursuing impractical dreams. The morning of the reunion, I arrived at the Hilton San Francisco Union Square at 9 a.m., 3 hours before the event was scheduled to begin. I was dressed casually: jeans, a simple blouse, and comfortable flats. To anyone who didn't know better, I looked like exactly what my family thought I was: a struggling artist who couldn't afford proper business attire. Jennifer met me in the lobby, impeccably dressed in her executive suit. "Miss Chen, everything is ready for this afternoon. The Imperial Ballroom looks spectacular, the catering team is prepared, and security has been briefed on the special circumstances." "Perfect. I want to do a final walkthrough before the guests arrive." The Imperial Ballroom was indeed spectacular. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables set with fine china and fresh flowers. A small stage had been set up at one end of the room, presumably for speeches and presentations about family achievements. The entire space radiated elegance and success, exactly what my family wanted for their celebration of accomplished relatives. At 11:45, I positioned myself in the hotel lobby, pretending to read a magazine while I watched my family members arrive. Uncle Richard strutted through the doors in an expensive suit, talking loudly on his phone about some tech deal. Cousin Jennifer followed, her designer heels clicking authoritatively across the marble floor. Marcus arrived with his wife, both of them dressed like they were attending a red carpet event. And finally, Aunt Patricia made her grand entrance, wearing what looked like a $5,000 dress and enough jewelry to fund a small startup. She surveyed the lobby with obvious satisfaction, clearly pleased with the venue she'd chosen for the family's successful people-only celebration. I waited until they were all gathered near the elevator bank, then approached casually. "Excuse me," I said to Patricia, keeping my voice pleasant but uncertain. "I'm looking for the Chin family reunion? I think there might have been some confusion." Patricia turned, and her face immediately hardened when she recognized me. "Why, what are you doing here? I was hoping we could talk. I know you said I wasn't invited, but this is my family too, and I thought maybe—" "Absolutely not." Her voice was loud enough to attract attention from other family members. "We made this very clear. This event is for successful family members only. You don't belong here." Uncle Richard stepped forward, looking me up and down with obvious disdain. "Patricia's right, Maya. Look at yourself. You can't even dress appropriately for a nice hotel. This is embarrassing." "I just thought." "You thought wrong," Marcus chimed in. "We're celebrating real achievements here. Business success, professional accomplishments. Not whatever it is you do with your art projects." Jennifer nodded approvingly. "It's nothing personal, Maya. It's just that we want to maintain a certain standard today. Maybe when you've actually accomplished something worthwhile, you can join us." I looked around at their faces, my own family, united in their certainty that I was a failure who would embarrass them in front of the other hotel guests. Several people in the lobby were watching our conversation with interest, clearly uncomfortable with the public display of family drama. "I understand," I said quietly. "I'm sorry I bothered you." Patricia smiled triumphantly. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a celebration to attend." They moved toward the elevators, leaving me standing alone in the lobby. I waited until the elevator doors closed, then walked over to the concierge desk. "Good afternoon, Ms. Chin. the concierge said with a professional smile. How can I assist you today? Could you please call security to the Imperial Ballroom? I need to speak with them about an issue with one of our events. Of course, Ms. Chin. Right away. I took the executive elevator to the ballroom level, using my owner's key card to access the restricted floors. Through the ballroom's glass doors, I could see my family settling in at their tables, drinks in hand, clearly enjoying their exclusive celebration. 2 security guards met me in the hallway. Ms. Chin, you wanted to see us. Yes. I need you to clear the Imperial Ballroom. There's been a problem with the booking. A problem, ma'am? I showed them my phone displaying the reservation details. This event was booked under false pretenses. The organizers specifically excluded the property owner from attending, which violates our company's non-discrimination policies. I'm canceling the event immediately. The guards exchanged glances. They both knew who I was, of course. My photo hung in the employee break room of every Meridian property, and I made a point of meeting with security teams during my regular property visits. Should we give them time to collect their belongings, Ms. Chin? 5 minutes. Then I want them escorted from the premises. I watched through the glass doors as the security guards entered the ballroom. I could see the confusion on my family's faces as the guards approached their tables and began speaking quietly to Patricia. The confusion quickly turned to outrage. Patricia's voice was loud enough to hear through the glass. This is ridiculous. We paid for this room. You can't just throw us out. One of the guards gestured toward the doors where I was standing. Patricia followed his gaze and her face went white when she saw me. I opened the doors and walked into the ballroom, my casual clothes and comfortable shoes a stark contrast to the elegant setting my family had chosen for their success celebration. Hello everyone, I said calmly. Maya, what is the meaning of this? Uncle Richard demanded. What did you tell them? I told them the truth. That you booked an event at my hotel and then specifically excluded the owner from attending. Dead silence. Your hotel. Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen, the Hilton corporate website with my photo and biography as chairman and CEO of Meridian Hospitality Group, parent company of Hilton Worldwide. My hotel. My chain actually. All 7,000 properties globally. Marcus's drink slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. That's impossible. You're an artist. You live in a tiny apartment and barely make rent. I couldn't help but laugh. I live in a 6,000 square foot penthouse in Pacific Heights that I bought for $12 million. I drive a modest car because I prefer reliability to flashiness. And yes, I'm still an artist. My work hangs in luxury hotels around the world, including this one. I gestured toward the walls of the ballroom, where several of my paintings were displayed as part of the hotel's permanent collection. But Maya, Jennifer stammered, you never said anything about owning hotels. We thought you were struggling. I stopped sharing my achievements with family members who had already decided I was a failure, I said simply. Every time I tried to tell you about a success, you found a way to diminish it or change the subject. So I stopped trying. Patricia looked around the ballroom at the elegant decor, the expensive catering, the luxury setting she'd chosen to celebrate family success, and the reality hit her like a physical blow. You mean, all of this is mine? Yes. The hotel, the room you booked, the catering you ordered, even the champagne you're drinking. All of it generated revenue for my company. Uncle Richard's face was red with embarrassment and anger. If you're so successful, why didn't you just tell us? Why let us believe you were a failure? Because you never asked. In 8 years, not one of you ever asked about my business, my achievements, or my life. You made assumptions based on stereotypes about artists and struggling creatives, and you never bothered to look deeper. The security guards were still waiting patiently near the door. Miss Chin, should we proceed with the escort? I looked around at my family, at the people who had spent years dismissing me, excluding me, and treating me like an embarrassment to the family name. They were sitting in my ballroom, drinking my champagne, celebrating success while deliberately excluding the most successful person in the room. Actually, I said, I've changed my mind. Everyone looked surprised. You came here to celebrate family success. Well, you're in the presence of the most successful member of this family, someone who built a global hospitality empire from scratch, who employs over 400,000 people worldwide, and whose company generates annual revenues of over $20 billion. I walked over to the microphone on the small stage. So let's celebrate. But let's celebrate honestly. The room was completely silent as I adjusted the microphone. My name is Maya Chin, and I'm the chairman and CEO of Meridian Hospitality Group. 6 months ago, I acquired Hilton Worldwide in the largest hospitality industry merger in history. Today, I own more hotel rooms than anyone else on the planet. I looked out at my family's stunned faces. I started this company 8 years ago with a single painting commission. I built it by working 18-hour days, by learning everything I could about business and finance, and by never accepting that artist and successful businesswoman were mutually exclusive categories. Patricia raised her hand tentatively, like a student asking permission to speak. We didn't know. We had no idea you were so successful. Yes, I gathered that from your phone call. Can you forgive us? We made a terrible mistake. I looked around the room at the faces of people who had spent years making me feel like I didn't belong in my own family. People who had excluded me from celebrations, dismissed my dreams, and treated my choices with condescension and pity. I can forgive you, I said finally. But I can't forget how quickly you were willing to exclude someone you thought was struggling. That says something about who you are as people. Uncle Richard stood up. Maya, please. We were wrong. Completely, totally wrong. Can we start over? You can start over with yourselves, I said. But as for me, I've built a life and a business that I'm proud of, surrounded by people who valued my contributions before they knew about my bank account. I walked toward the door, then stopped. The good news is you can still have your reunion. The room is paid for, the catering is excellent, and the champagne is top shelf. Enjoy celebrating your successes. But what about you? Marcus called out. I smiled. I have a business to run. 3 new properties opening this month, 2 major acquisitions closing next week, and a board meeting in Tokyo on Wednesday. Success doesn't take days off. As I reached the door, Patricia called out one more time. Maya, wait. We want you to stay. Please. We want to celebrate your success. I paused in the doorway. Aunt Patricia, 3 hours ago you told me I didn't belong here because I wasn't successful enough. Now you want me to stay because I'm too successful to exclude. Do you see the problem with that? She didn't answer. When you're ready to have a relationship with me that isn't based on your assumptions about my worth or your assessment of my achievements, give me a call. Until then, enjoy your celebration of successful family members. I walked out of the ballroom and took the elevator down to the lobby, leaving my family to process what had just happened. As I walked through the marble lobby of my hotel, past guests who had no idea they were in the presence of the owner, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace with my choices. I'd built something extraordinary not to prove my family wrong, but because I had a vision and the determination to make it real. Their recognition would have been nice, but it had never been necessary. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Martinez. Miss Chin, just wanted to confirm, should we proceed with normal service for the Chin family event? I typed back, yes. Give them the full VIP experience. They're still my family even if they forgot I was theirs. That evening, I was back in my penthouse apartment, reviewing plans for the new Meridian Resort in Bali, when my phone rang. It was Marcus. Maya. Hi, Marcus. I've been thinking about what happened today. About what you said. And I realized I don't know anything about your life. I don't know what your company does, where you live, what you care about. I've spent years talking about my restaurants without ever asking about your work. I set down my tablet. That's true. Could we maybe have dinner sometime? Just the 2 of us? I'd like to learn about who you really are, not who I assumed you were. I thought about it. Marcus had been dismissive and condescending, but he'd also been the first to acknowledge the problem and ask for a chance to fix it. I'd like that, I said finally. Really? Really? But Marcus. Yeah. When we have dinner, I want you to tell me about your restaurants, not because you're trying to impress me, but because you're proud of them. And I'll tell you about my hotels the same way. Deal. Deal. After we hung up, I walked out to my terrace and looked out at the San Francisco skyline. In the distance, I could see the lights of 3 of my hotels, including the Hilton where my family had just learned that their struggling artist relative was actually one of the most successful people in the hospitality industry. Tomorrow, I would fly to London to finalize the acquisition of a boutique hotel chain. Next week, I would be in Dubai reviewing plans for a new luxury resort. In a month, I would appear on the cover of Fortune magazine as their CEO of the Year. But tonight, I was just Maya Chin, a woman who had turned her family's dismissal into the motivation to build something remarkable, and who had finally found the courage to show them exactly who she had become. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well. But sometimes, if you're very fortunate, living well becomes the foundation for rebuilding relationships on terms of mutual respect instead of assumed failure. And that felt better than any revenge I could have imagined. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages from various family members. Apparently, word had spread quickly through the extended family about what had happened at the reunion. The messages ranged from shocked, "Is it true you own Hilton?" to apologetic, "I'm so sorry we never took your work seriously," to opportunistic, "Would love to discuss some business opportunities with you." But the one that made me smile was from my 12-year-old niece Marcus's daughter. "Aunt Maya, I always thought you were the coolest person in our family because you were an artist. Now I think you're even cooler because you're a successful artist and a business owner. Can you teach me how to paint hotels?" I typed back, "Absolutely. But first, let me teach you that you can be anything you want to be regardless of what other people think is possible." Because that, ultimately, was the real lesson of the Hilton San Francisco Union Square reunion. That success isn't about meeting other people's expectations, but about exceeding your own. And sometimes, the people who doubt you the most end up giving you the greatest gift of all, the motivation to prove that their limitations were never yours to accept.